If you're a sports fan, if you love basketball, this is your weekend coming up. The Final Four is upon us, and our colleagues at TBS, they've got the deal. Saturday, there it is, Game 1. The top seed overall, Florida taking on kind of a surprise team, UConn. I mean, they got a great pedigree of basketball there, but very surprising. They're in the Final Four. They're playing good basketball. Gators and UConn, that's first. Game 2, Wisconsin and Kentucky. Styles make great fights. That's going to be a great one as well. And you know who's got front row seating, and he's a great play-by-play man. He's our colleague from Turner Sports. He's going to be calling the action. There he is, Steve Kerr. He's got championship pedigree, 5-time NBA champ, 3 rings with Michael Jordan and the Bulls, a couple with the Spurs and Tim Duncan. Final Four with Arizona, right? Way back when?
Back in 1988. That was a long time ago.
There you go. But, again, you got front row seating, do a great job calling the action. Well, let's get to it. First off, and you and I were just talking in the break, not the Final Four I think anybody predicted, right?
Probably not. Florida was a popular pick, but the other 3 teams I think are a relative surprise. Wisconsin was a 2 seed and an excellent club all season long, but Kentucky and UConn, I think, major surprises to have made it this far for sure.
Well, let's talk about Kentucky. Again, it's Kentucky and Wisconsin. That's going to be a great one. That's the second game Saturday night. But Kentucky, all the talent in the world coming in. Preseason #1. They're young, 4 freshmen. The freshman 4, you got the 2 twins, Andrew and Aaron Harrison. Is it just these young guys finally figured it out, Steve?
I think that's pretty much the case. They struggled in the middle of the season, but it's really shocking when you look at it. I mean, 7 of their top 8 players are freshmen. That's unprecedented. You know, Kentucky won the whole thing 2 years ago, playing a lot of freshmen, but that team was mixed in with some veterans, some sophomores, a couple seniors. This club is probably the youngest team that I've ever seen, and they're loaded with talent, but it took them a long time to kick it into gear, and they did so just in time. But they are really on a roll right now.
I mean, talent, unquestioned there, and you've laid it out. They figured it out. How many of these kids, and I don't want to get into the debate of how many years you stay in college or anything, but on a factual front, how many of these kids could jump right to the pros now and make an impact?
I'm not sure this year's team has more than one. I think Julius Randle is going to be a top 5 or 6 pick in the draft this year when he comes out. He's the one guy who stands out. That team 2 years ago, Anthony Davis was the unquestioned top pick in the draft. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist was right behind him. I felt like that team was more NBA ready. This team really is still very young, and I don't think most of its players are prepared for the pros. Eventually, a lot of them are going to get there.
Right.
But only Julius Randle is ready at this point.
Okay, good. Okay. And again, styles make great fights. Kentucky on one side, taking on Wisconsin. And their guy that's getting all the pub is Frank Kaminsky. They're calling him Frank the Tank. Frank the Tank's his own hashtag. I mean, this guy... there's Wall Street Journal articles about him. He's become an NBA prospect. He's the guy that's made the difference, don't you think?
Yeah, he took down my Arizona Wildcats last week, so I had a front row seat for that one. Kaminsky's been terrific, the most versatile scorer probably in the tournament. He's a 7-footer who can shoot threes but also score inside. And I like your line, styles make great fights. This is 2 totally different styles. Wisconsin is going to shoot the 3 from all over the place. They're going to control the tempo. They lead the nation in fewest turnovers. So they're able to really kind of dictate the terms of the engagement. And now they're going against this freshman team that has grown up, but may have some more growing pains ahead of them. They've got a major test, Kentucky does, in trying to wear down this Wisconsin team, a team that just does not get bothered during the course of the game.
Can you make a pick on this one, or do you have to? You're calling the action. You can't.
Well, I don't really. I don't mind that stuff. I think it's a toss-up. I really do. I think that if Wisconsin can keep Kentucky off the offensive glass, which is a major job.
Yeah.
If they can do so, I think they'll win the game. I think Wisconsin is the better team, the more rounded team. Kentucky's front line, though, is just so athletic and dominant, and they've crushed all 4 of their opponents in the tournament on the glass. That's the big question mark for me going into this game.
Yeah, even Michigan's coach at half, basically said they're playing above the rim. Quickly in that game, Michigan was the underdog, just scrapping, and they did a good job staying close. And by the way, back to Kaminsky, your buddy Charles Barkley loves him. I was doing a little teaching on the blackboard. It's just get the ball to Kaminsky. Get the ball to Kaminsky. Charles was right. Charles was right about
Hey, sometimes the lesson is pretty easy in this game. Get the ball to your best guy and let him go.
Florida and UConn, last team to beat Florida way back December 2nd. UConn, and let's hit on that. They've won 30 in a row. Would you be a little nervous if you're Florida? I mean, the streak, well, maybe it won't end. But do you want to carry a streak like that or what? What do you think? It adds some pressure, doesn't it?
I think it's different from being totally undefeated going into the Final Four where you're tempting history. I think this is just a winning streak. I don't think there's added pressure because of it. I do think it helps Florida that they've seen UConn, and vice versa, of course. But that game was played at UConn. It was a difficult road test, and Florida probably should have won the game. I actually like the matchup for Florida, and I think they'll be okay. But UConn has the best player in the Final Four in Shabazz Napier. He's been fantastic. And if it's close down the stretch, he could very easily take over the game.
Yeah, Shabazz Napier. And don't you like his story? He's a guy that could have left early, stayed. And I know just a great story about, number one for his mom, graduate. And he loves his mom and said, anything for you, Mom. Sounds like a great kid, a great leader. And obviously you've laid it out, great basketball player.
Yeah, it's a great story. This is what happens when an NBA player, a potential NBA player, after his freshman or sophomore year decides, you know what, I'm going to stick around and get better and grow. This is the result. A dominant college player, somebody who is more mature than a lot of the people who he's playing against, and someone who now has seen it all. And Napier plays that way. He's fearless. He's the best player on the floor every night out. And he's pretty much carried this team. He's got a lot of help, but he's carried this club to the Final Four. It's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, and more on his story, academic honor roll. And by the way, and it's just a nice ending to this story, other than whether or not they're going to win a title, he's going to get his diploma on Mother's Day. Mom's going to be there. Great story there. Do you have a thought on that? I mean, and he even says it. Everybody's life's different, and nobody's indicting anybody. But how do you make that call? He's plenty talented enough, stayed. Others with talent, go. I mean, you just got to get great advice, I'd imagine, right, Steve?
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone's circumstances are different. I do think that Shabazz is a great example for a lot of players who are maybe trying to figure out what they want to do in terms of staying in college or moving on to the NBA. But the growth that a player and a student athlete achieves by staying 4 years and playing all these games and getting a degree, it's hard to measure that. And I think it shows up in a lot of different ways, not just on the court, but off of it. But how can you blame any of these young kids for leaving early when there's millions of dollars at stake and a risk of injury that would deny all of that? So I think everybody has a different circumstance, and they have to do what's best for them.
All right. Hey, Steve, before we let you go, I got to ask about your future. There's talks, coaching could be in your future, of the Knicks to bring the glory back. Thoughts on that, my friend?
Yeah, you know what? I'm flattered that my name is out there, but it's not anything that I'm even thinking about right now. I mean, I'm so happy doing what I'm doing and love working for Turner and doing the Final Four and the NBA playoffs. And I think coaching probably is in my future at some point, but I don't know when.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's hard to believe when you think of the storied Knicks have not won a title since '73. We'll see if you're a part of bringing back the glory or not. Well answered, by the way. Nice job.